The snow hadn't stopped falling since dawn. My windshield wipers moved in tired rhythm, barely keeping up, as I squinted into the thick gray blur of highway ahead. I'd been on the road for over 9 hours, crossing state lines from Boston to upstate New York, just to make it in time for Thanksgiving dinner with my family. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel, and my back felt like it had fused into the driver's seat. But still, I drove. Because that's what a good daughter does. Because that's what I've always done. I pulled into the old familiar driveway, the house glowing with soft yellow lights, and the same sagging porch I'd helped repair 3 winters ago. I was exhausted, but something warm flickered in my chest. I'd made it. Despite my job, despite the stress, despite everything, I showed up. Again. I stepped out of the car, brushed snow off my coat, grabbed the bag of gifts and groceries I'd brought, and walked up the steps. Just as I reached for the door, I heard my brother's voice inside. "She's just a wallet with a face." I froze. Laughter followed. My mother's laugh. Then the clink of glasses. "Let her pay the bills," my brother added. "She thinks she's buying love." Works for me. I mean, my mother chimed in, "As long as the mortgage gets paid every month. I don't really care how dramatic she gets." The bag of groceries slipped from my hand. I stared at the door like it might swallow me whole. The heat that had built from the drive vanished, replaced by a cold that had nothing to do with snow. My brother's voice again, now lower, more cruel. "I swear, if she ever stops sending money, I'll block her number." "She won't," my mother replied. "She's too desperate to feel needed." I didn't open the door. I didn't knock. I turned and walked back to the car. Snow collected on my shoulders, the bag of groceries forgotten on the porch. I started the engine with shaking hands, numb, not from cold, but from something deeper. My chest felt hollow. My eyes stung. For a long time, I didn't move. Just sat there, engine running, watching the warm house filled with people I loved more than they ever loved me. Then I backed out of the driveway and drove away, tires crunching through ice. They didn't see me arrive. They wouldn't see me leave. But soon they would feel everything I'd been holding back. The storm outside was nothing compared to what was about to come. My name is Sophia Green. I'm 32 years old, single, and until last November, I believed I was the glue holding my family together. I grew up in a small town outside Syracuse, New York, blue-collar factory town kind of place. My parents never went to college. My father worked in auto repair, my mother part-time at a pharmacy. We were never close-knit, just close out of necessity. As the youngest and the only daughter, I was expected to stay nearby, marry someone local, and maybe work at the same pharmacy like Mom. But I wanted more. I left home at 18, got a scholarship to a university in Boston, and never looked back. My family never understood. They called me ambitious, like it was a dirty word. When I landed a job at a major financial firm in Boston at 23, I was making more in a month than my parents did in 6. That didn't earn their respect, only their expectations. It started small. "Can you help with the car insurance this month?" Then the mortgage. Then credit cards. Then my brother Luke called crying one night about his student loans. I paid them off the next day. I paid for the roof repairs after a hailstorm. I co-signed a personal loan when my father wanted to start a secondhand auto parts business that failed within 6 months. I wired money every time my mother claimed the house was falling apart. In 7 years, I'd transferred over $180,000 to them, and I never asked for any of it back. I never even asked for gratitude. I just wanted to be wanted. Every visit home was transactional, but I didn't let myself see it. I brought gifts, paid for groceries, stocked the fridge, handed out Amazon gift cards, and they'd smile, say thanks, and then disappear into their phones or their problems. There was no warmth, but I pretended there was, because that's what I was taught to do. Be quiet, be helpful, don't make a fuss, keep giving, keep smiling. The breaking point came not just from the words I overheard that night, but from the weight of every previous moment where I'd chosen to believe I mattered. When I canceled my engagement at 29, they blamed me. Said my fiancé wasn't man enough, and that I'd be lucky if anyone else ever wanted me. When I was promoted to Vice President of Financial Strategy last year, they didn't even acknowledge it. My mother texted cool when I told her. But the moment my brother's wife needed emergency dental surgery and they couldn't afford it, I got 5 missed calls in one day. I paid, of course, because that's what I did. That's who I was, until I heard that sentence. She's just a wallet with a face. In that instant, my entire identity crumbled. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I was a financial utility valuable only for what I provided. I thought of all the nights I stayed late at work investing, planning, building a future not just for me, but for them. And all they saw was an ATM with legs. That night, as I drove back through the snow-covered interstate, I made a decision. No more. The girl who gave endlessly in exchange for conditional love was gone. The woman taking her place. She didn't forgive. She didn't explain. She calculated. By the time I crossed the Massachusetts state line, the snowfall had lightened, but the storm inside me had only grown stronger. I drove in silence, not even the hum of the radio to distract me. The words kept echoing. She's just a wallet with a face, over and over. I kept seeing their faces laughing relaxed, as if they hadn't drained me for years, as if they hadn't hollowed me out and called it love. I pulled into my apartment garage after midnight. The building was quiet, the city asleep. My Boston apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, paid for with my sweat, my time, and my discipline. Inside, I tossed my coat aside and sat in the dark living room, staring out at the snow-lit street. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I reviewed, like a financial audit. I thought about the patterns I'd ignored, the time Mom guilted me for taking a vacation instead of visiting, the way Luke rolled his eyes when I offered career advice, the time Dad said, "All your fancy degrees don't mean anything in the real world," right before asking me to co-sign another loan. I thought about the way they always had some minor emergency medical bills, car trouble, leaky roof, missed payments, always just enough to keep me tethered, never enough to say thank you. It was all part of a silent contract I had never agreed to. I gave. They took. And I convinced myself it was love. But that contract was null. I opened my laptop and pulled up 6 years of bank statements, hundreds of transfers. I sorted them by amount, by recipient, by month. I highlighted every pattern, every recurring request. 2,000 monthly to Mom, car repairs in Luke's name, bailout for that failed shop Dad tried to run. I opened a spreadsheet and began categorizing them. Then I opened another document. I called it recalibration. Inside, I started writing. Not just numbers, but memories, manipulations, quotes, a record of every time they'd minimize my success, maximize their needs, and wrapped it all in the flag of family. I wasn't doing it out of bitterness. I was doing it to remember, because pain fades, and I didn't want to forget what I'd heard or how I felt ever again. Around 3 a.m., I finally closed the laptop. My body ached, but I felt more awake than I had in years. A different kind of clarity had taken root. This wasn't about revenge, not exactly. This was about realignment, about reclaiming power I didn't even know I'd surrendered. I walked to the mirror. My reflection was pale, tired, and sharper somehow, like a blade just sharpened. I wasn't going to lash out. I was going to restructure, quietly, deliberately. I wasn't going to confront them. I was going to make myself unreachable. And I'd watch what happened when the safety net they didn't even respect was gone. They wanted a wallet with a face. Let's see how they do without either. The next morning, I started executing the plan, not in anger, in silence. I began by logging into my banking dashboard and canceling every automated transfer. The $2,000 monthly deposit to my mother's account paused. The auto pay for my parents' utilities disabled. The overdraft protection linked to my own savings removed. I scheduled a call with my financial advisor and told him to separate all shared accounts, revoke all secondary access, and begin the process of restructuring my estate. I changed passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, and resecured every account I'd once opened in the name of family trust. It felt surgical, clean, empowering. Then I contacted a lawyer, a woman named Anita, whom I'd met through a client last year. I explained what I needed: a new will, immediate, all prior beneficiaries removed. I wanted a trust set up for a nonprofit that supports young women in financial literacy. Anita didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Let's get it done." I sent her everything: tax records, account info, proof of previous transfers. She called back the next day. Sophia, based on your documentation, you've given over $200,000 to your family in the past 6 years. Do you want that reflected? I want it recorded, I said. But I don't want it influencing my choices anymore. She was quiet for a moment. Understood. Next, I started gathering what I called soft evidence. Not legal, just emotional. I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages. Voice notes from my mother asking for money while saying, "It's the least you can do since we gave you life." Screenshots of texts where Luke told his friends he was milking the corporate sister. A voicemail from Dad complaining that I never visit, followed by one asking me to float a quick 10 grand for his new boat engine. I cataloged them all, not for revenge, for protection. Then I made one final change. I closed the joint savings account I'd opened with my brother 5 years ago, when he was trying to get on his feet. I hadn't checked the balance in months. It was down to $83. I transferred the remainder to my personal account and closed it. I didn't tell him. Let the bank notify him. By Friday, everything was in motion. My money was secure, my assets protected, my emotional bandwidth freed. On Saturday, my mother called. I let it ring. Then she texted, "Hi, sweetie. Did you forget the transfer this month? Hope everything's okay." I didn't reply. Sunday, my father left a voicemail. "Hey, Soph, there's some issue with the power bill. Your payment didn't go through. Mind checking I deleted it." Monday, Luke called. Twice. No voicemail. I smiled. The silence was working. They weren't panicking. Not yet. They were confused. They still believed this was a mistake, a delay, a glitch. But I knew the timeline. By the end of the month, when mortgage payments bounced and utilities went unpaid, they'd start to realize something had shifted, something they couldn't guilt or manipulate back into place. The following Thursday, I received an email from Luke. Subject: "We need to talk." I didn't open it, I archived it. 2 hours later, a second email. This one just said, "Did we do something wrong?" I printed it and added it to the recalibration folder. It wasn't guilt. It was leverage. By week's end, I'd heard from every member of the family. Each message followed the same arc-mild concern, growing urgency, and finally veiled accusation. "You okay?" turned into, "Is this some kind of punishment?" turned into, "I can't believe you'd be so selfish." That last one came from my mother, a text on a Sunday morning. "After everything we've done for you, you're really going to turn your back on us like this?" I laughed when I read it. Then I texted back, "Name one thing you've done for me in the past 10 years that didn't involve asking for money." No reply. Days passed. Silence grew. But I knew what came next. Desperation. The kind that forces people to show you who they really are. I was ready. By the start of the new month, the calls turned frantic. My mother left voicemails every morning. "Sophia, the bank just called. They said the mortgage payment bounced. I don't understand. Can you please call them and sort it out?" Then another, "Are you okay? I'm getting really worried. This isn't like you." And finally, "This is cruel, Sophia. You can't just disappear like this. We're your family." I sat at my kitchen table listening to her voice as I sipped my coffee, calm and unmoved. Across the table, the recalibration folder remained open. I added another note beneath her message. "Concern escalates only when comfort is lost." Luke's messages grew shorter and sharper. "Yo, I need to know if the rent help is coming. Don't leave me hanging like this." Followed 2 days later by, "I can't believe you do this to your own brother. You've changed." He was right. I had changed. Or more accurately, I had revealed the version of me they refused to see. The one with limits. The one who no longer confused financial support with love. On the 15th, I received a call from the bank. A polite woman informed me that my name had been removed as co-signer from two of the family's loan accounts due to a change in policy. I thanked her. I'd initiated that change myself through my financial advisor. Every tether was being severed, cleanly, legally, permanently. That weekend, I went for a walk through Boston Common. The trees were bare, the air sharp with winter. Children played in coats too big for their small frames, parents trailing behind. I watched them without envy. I no longer looked at families and wished mine were different. I accepted it now. Mine wasn't broken. It was functioning exactly as designed: transactional, manipulative, and emotionally bankrupt. The only difference now was that I had stopped participating. That evening, I received another email, this one from my father. "We need to talk. Your mother is having a hard time sleeping. Your silence is hurting the family. We don't deserve this." I stared at the line. "We don't deserve this." Then I copied the phrase into the recalibration document and followed it with a simple question: what have they deserved, and how did they earn it? The next morning, my office receptionist informed me that someone named Luke had called twice asking to speak to me. He sounded agitated, she said. I gave her clear instructions. Politely inform him I do not take personal calls at work and he is not to contact me again here. Of course, she said, not asking questions. She didn't need to. People who respect boundaries don't test them. The financial withdrawal phase was nearly complete. Their comfort was disrupted. Their entitlement was exposed. And I was just getting started. By the third week, the calls from my family slowed, but the pressure shifted. It moved from me to the people around them. I had anticipated it. My parents were active members of their local church group, and Luke often bragged about being the successful sibling to anyone who would listen at the bar. That illusion would not hold much longer. I drafted a carefully worded email addressed to a handful of community figures' names I'd heard mentioned in family stories over the years: the pastor's wife, the family doctor, a neighbor who often joined them for barbecues. I didn't accuse. I simply stated facts. In light of recent personal decisions, I will no longer be providing financial support to the Green family. This is a private matter, but I feel obligated to clarify that over the past 6 years, I contributed over $200,000 in silent support, including mortgage payments, medical expenses, education loans, and emergency aid. I share this not for pity, but because I know narratives often become distorted when people lose access to resources. Please note, this choice was not made lightly. I ended it with my name and phone number, but no request for response. I wasn't inviting a debate. I was laying a foundation. Within 48 hours, I received 3 messages of quiet support. A text from the doctor: "You've always been generous. I'm sorry it wasn't appreciated." A call from the neighbor: "I had no idea, Sophia. That's a lot. If you ever need to talk, I'm here." And an email from the pastor's wife: "Thank you for your grace and transparency. Families can be complicated." Meanwhile, the fallout began. My mother was asked to step down from a leadership role at her church committee. Too much gossip surrounding her. Luke complained in a group text to old friends that people were acting weird, asking questions about the money he used to brag about. I watched the ripples from afar, not with satisfaction, but with precision. It wasn't about revenge. It was about correcting a record. For years, I'd been the villain in their whispered stories. The cold, too busy, too proud daughter who never visited enough. Now people were starting to wonder, what if Sophia had reasons? What if she wasn't the selfish one? On the surface, I remained silent. I posted nothing online. I responded to no messages. But quietly, I began severing digital ties. I unfollowed family on social media, removed tags, changed privacy settings, blocked certain contacts. My name would no longer be the one they used to leverage pity or support. The social restructuring was working. Their narrative was cracking. And the isolation they once used against me, emotional distance, guilt, coldness, was now surrounding them. They weren't victims of abandonment. They were recipients of consequences. And they were just beginning to understand the difference. By the beginning of December, the situation for my family had become visibly unstable. Through a friend still living in my hometown, I learned that my parents were behind on their mortgage, and Luke had moved back in with them after defaulting on his lease. The once proud voices that mocked my need to control everything were now whispering about refinancing and community aid. It was around this time that I finalized my new estate plan. I sat across from Anita in her quiet office while she reviewed the last set of documents. "Everything is now updated," she said, sliding the final page across the table. "Your assets, real estate, retirement investments, all allocated to the Women's Equity Fund per your instructions." I signed without hesitation. My name felt solid in the signature, like the end of a chapter I had been trying to finish for years. And just to confirm, Anita continued, none of your immediate family are listed as beneficiaries. Correct, I said. They'll be notified if necessary, but I have no intention of revisiting this. Understood. She nodded. That same week, I filed paperwork to legally separate any financial link I still had to my parents' utilities, shared insurances, emergency contact permissions, all dissolved. I kept copies in my folder. At home, I began creating a digital timeline. Every transfer I had ever made, every favor, every manipulated request aligned with corresponding events, weddings, repairs, birthdays, guilt-laced voicemails. The pattern was undeniable, and now unbreakable. On December 14th, I received a letter from my family's attorney. Not a lawsuit, an invitation. A formal request to open a dialogue regarding recent inheritance rumors and to clarify familial responsibilities. I didn't respond. I forwarded the letter to Anita, who sent a brief reply. Ms. Green has no legal obligation to participate in any dialogue. Her affairs are independently managed and do not involve family-based consideration. That afternoon, Luke called my office line. It went to voicemail. His voice was angry, confused. You can't just erase us, Sophia. We're your family. You think you're punishing us, but you're hurting everyone. Even yourself. I played it twice, then deleted it. The following weekend, my father left a handwritten note taped to my apartment door. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. We don't understand how we became the enemy. I didn't remove it. I let it hang there, a public testament to the unraveling. By Christmas Eve, the silence from me had transformed into something unignorable. Not just absence, but power, control, definition. They were spiraling, financially insecure, socially exposed, legally abandoned. All while I prepared for the quietest holiday of my adult life. No noise, no forced traditions, just peace. The collapse was nearly complete, and all I had done was nothing but say no. Nothing but no more, no longer, not again. The final part of my strategy was yet to come, but for now, I watched the empire of guilt they had built collapse under its own weight. 3 months passed in near silence. Winter began to loosen its grip on Boston, and with it the last remnants of guilt that had once lingered in the back of my mind melted away. My apartment had become a sanctuary, my routines calm, my finances secure. But then in early March, an unexpected email arrived. It wasn't from my parents, not from Luke. It was from his wife, Emma. Subject I never knew. The body of the message was short, almost shy. Sophia, I don't know if you'll read this. I understand if you've blocked us all. But I found some emails, bank records, screenshots from Luke's chats with his friends. I had no idea how much you were doing for everyone. I believed them when they said you liked being in control, but now I think they just like being dependent. I've left Luke. I'm living with my sister for now. I want to say I'm sorry, and thank you. You didn't deserve what they did. I sat frozen for several minutes after reading it, not because I forgave her, but because she had seen it, finally. Someone had peeled back the story and looked at the numbers, the tone, the pattern. Someone had realized I wasn't cruel. I was exhausted. My reply was brief. Thank you for writing. I hope you build something better for yourself. I didn't want a relationship, but I respected her for breaking the pattern. Later that night, I updated the recalibration document. I added a new section. Emergence. For every collapse, someone finds clarity. Let them. A week later, I received another message, this time a letter, handwritten, from my mother. The envelope had my name in shaky cursive. Inside, a long, rambling apology filled with underlines, crossed-out words, and confusing justifications. She wrote about being afraid, about needing security, about never understanding why I didn't just accept help the way others did. She didn't mention love. She mentioned survival. At the end, one line stood out. We were wrong to treat you like a resource instead of a person. I see that now. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the back of the folder, not with the main file. But I didn't throw it away. not because I trusted her, but because it mattered that she wrote it. A week passed, then two. No more messages, no calls, no guilt. Luke had gone completely silent. I heard from an old classmate that he'd taken a job stocking shelves in a warehouse outside town. Mom had picked up a part-time gig at the pharmacy again. Dad was reportedly spending most days alone in the garage fixing things that didn't need fixing. For the first time in my adult life, my family was living independently, broken, but real. I began sleeping better, eating slower, smiling more often. The twist wasn't that they had changed. The twist was that I no longer needed them to. Their recognition didn't restore anything, but it completed something. A loop, a cycle, a lesson. Not every apology leads to reconnection. Sometimes it simply marks the place where silence begins to heal. Spring arrived with an honesty that felt earned. The days were longer, the air warmer, and inside me something quiet had settled into place. Peace, maybe. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness, but the kind that follows reclamation. I no longer flinched at unknown numbers or jumped when emails pinged after midnight. I had severed the expectations, the old contracts written in guilt and obligation. Now I was rebuilding. I moved into a new apartment closer to the waterfront. Smaller, simpler, but entirely mine. I spent Saturday mornings walking along the Charles River with a cup of black coffee and my thoughts. No more spreadsheets of family debt. No more calls from people who only remembered me at the beginning of each month. Just air and space and me. One afternoon, I attended a local event hosted by the Women's Equity Fund, the organization now listed in my will. A small group of young women were learning about budgeting, investing, job applications. I spoke for 15 minutes about building financial boundaries, about how money is not love, and silence is not loyalty. Afterward, one of them approached me. She was 19, unsure of herself and holding back tears. No one's ever said that before, that it's okay to say no. I looked at her and saw myself at that age, naive, desperate to be enough. It's not just okay, I said. It's necessary. That night I sat in my quiet kitchen and opened a new document. I called it continuation. It wasn't a log. It wasn't evidence. It was a plan, not for revenge, not for defense, but for building. I listed goals that had nothing to do with fixing others. Learn to paint, travel to Lisbon, mentor 5 women by the end of the year. Adopt. The last one surprised me when I typed it, but I didn't delete it. It stayed. I was no longer interested in being needed. I wanted to choose connection, not perform it. My family had taught me that love without respect is erosion, and I had learned that my value didn't require proof, just boundaries. Clear, unwavering, non-negotiable. Luke never reached out again. My parents remained distant. Once in a while, I'd receive a birthday card signed awkwardly by both, always without return address. I never replied. Not out of cruelty, but because some silences are sacred. I wasn't punishing them. I was protecting myself. In time, that became enough. 1 year after I walked away, I sat on the back porch of my new apartment, a warm breeze brushing across my shoulders, and thought about everything that had changed. Not just in my family, but in me. The woman who had once driven 9 hours through snow to be seen was gone. In her place was someone quieter, sharper, and deeply certain of her worth. I never intended to teach anyone a lesson. I wasn't trying to destroy anyone's life. I was simply done living mine on their terms. What I learned is this family is not a license. It does not grant access to your energy, your finances, or your peace. Love without respect is just manipulation wearing a mask. And loyalty without boundaries is slow self-erasure. I used to believe that the measure of my love was how much I could give, but now I know it's how much I can preserve. My time, my joy, my purpose. I look around my life now and see the quiet fruits of that clarity. No chaos, no emergencies disguised as affection. Just mornings that begin without dread and evenings that end in rest. I never rebuilt things with my family, and that's okay. Some stories don't end with hugs and reconciliations. Some end with distance and strength and the peace that comes from letting go. When people ask me why I don't talk to them anymore, I say this: I stopped negotiating my worth. I stopped auditioning for love that came with conditions. And once I made that decision, everything else aligned. If someone ever hears this story and sees themselves in it, I hope they remember your value is not measured by what you tolerate. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they share your blood. You get to decide who sits at your table. And if they ever mock your seat at theirs, walk away. You are not a wallet with a face. You are a person with power. Use it, and never apologize for protecting your peace.